nothing like that show that we did. It was one of the probably greatest rock shows in history, without a doubt.
Everyone who sees this video, this is Scott Page. You are a legendary saxophonist and rhythm guitarist for bands like Pink Floyd and Toto.
Yep.
So tell us a little bit about that. Like, where did you get started with that?
Well, I grew up in a musical family. My father was a musician. I don't know if you, maybe not too many people remember a television show called The Lawrence Welk Show. And Lawrence Welk was a show that was on every week. It was one of the early TV shows. So I grew up around music all my life. My father, so I wanted to play. I wasn't really into it. I studied to be an architect. I was studying through school, basically be an architect, but I kept playing through school just to kind of for my dad at the time. Because he would say to me, you know, you can always go play a gig on the weekend instead of working in a gas station. You can go make some money and blah, blah, blah. So I kept playing through those years. Then I ended up and got very fortunate. I hooked up with Jeff Beccaro and David Paich, who were the founders of Toto. And we had a kid band early in the day called Merciful Soul Band. And I was basically the oldest guy in that band. It was like a Chicago blood, sweat, and tears band. And we started playing gigs, and the band was so good. We were winning all the Battle of the Bands and everything. And at that time, I was in high school. I just got out of high school. I just got out of high school. I was in college, just barely getting in there. And I got a job. I was working for a company called Audiodyne. I was working there drawing and drafting because I had really good drafting skills. And those were the days we had no computer, so you had to use a pen and a pencil and a ruler to draw. But so I was working for them, started playing with Jeff and those guys. We're winning all the Battle of Bands, and I realized there were girls at those gigs and there were no girls. So I ended up saying, this is not for me. I'm going to become a musician. So from that point, I just started studying like really hard. I studied mostly with a lot of private teachers, and I studied composing and arranging with a teacher by the name of Lyle Spud Murphy, and graduated from this course called the Equal Interval System, which is a whole 12-tone system, but took up, got involved in the composing and arranging space for a while, but really got into playing a lot, got lucky, got some fun gigs. And later on, I always tell artists the most important thing is to play. A lot of times they will say, yeah, but if it doesn't pay enough money, it's not worth it. And I'm saying, well, then if it's just about the money, then you're probably in the wrong business. Right. You never know where gigs are going to come from, right? So I would take every gig I could possibly take. It didn't matter what it was for free or whatever, just hoping that somebody you never know where you're going to meet somebody. Well, I used to play this one gig. I mean, I played a variety of things, but through the years, I got with Seals and Croft, was kind of the first big band that I really played with. I started music. I had a band. We were in a band called Max. The big difference is we see that, back in those days, you could actually make a living just playing clubs. You could make enough money in a week. Well, I remember my house payment was $237 a month back in the day. So those were times gas was at 28 cents a gallon. And so I've been doing this a long time. But today, I believe today is actually one of the greatest times in history for the independent artist, without a doubt. Mainly because the sad part is it's hard to make a living because cost of living is so high to make enough living just playing gigs and clubs around town. And that was one of the advantages we had back in the day. But today we're in a place where, it's really about whoever owns the audience wins. And it doesn't really take a lot of audience like it used to take, because now we have direct access to audience through all the social platforms. So it's really about how clever you are to build your super fan base. And we know that there's a model called the 1,000 True Fans, which some of you might have heard out there, which means, a true fan is somebody that will spend $100 a year on you. And if I have 1,000 of those fans, there's $100,000 in revenue. So it's really about how do I build up that super fan base. I actually teach something which might be interesting since this is about this subject of gigging and making money as an artist. I teach a thing called SPACE. And SPACE stands for Story, Plan, Army, Conversion, Education. And so what I mean by that, that's why I believe this is the kind of winning formula for artists. I actually taught this out at USC a few years ago. And the whole idea is everything starts with story. Your story is critical, but it's not the story of, hey, I'm a saxophone player. I'm from Cincinnati. I grew up. Nobody cares about that story. I'm a singer-songwriter from Jim. Nobody cares. It really is, what do you stand for and what's your purpose? And what I mean by that is it's like, how do you rise above the noise in this whole market, especially in the social world with everything? And there's so much stuff. And now, especially with the way the algorithms have changed, and there's so many differences now in the way the whole systems work. But how do you rise above the noise? It really starts with the story. Why do people care? What is it about? So I always try to tell artists that, your story needs to be about, what do you stand for? What's your purpose? What are you about? The first question I ask every artist is, what problem are you solving? And that's an interesting one, because most artists will say, well, I sit around, smoke fatties, and write songs all day and hope and pray that I'm going to get me a deal. Well, that's fine if you're going to play the hits game, but really today it's really about, what can you do that you can talk about, that you really go after audience. And why I say the story is so important is not only is it important from what you're talking about, but once we have the data from that, the keywords, the phrases, and all those things, we can kind of determine who your audience is, who's going to care, because we now have access to data like we've never had before. I mean, data is probably the most powerful thing we have as artists, and I really suggest every artist out there needs to take a look at learning and understanding how the data works and what you get, the tools and things. And we'll get into that in a minute. But story. So once you know your story and you have your purpose, because if you can find something people care about, that's an audience you can go after. Let's say you happen to be, I had an artist that I was working with who was really focused on the homeless issue for veterans. I said, okay, now we have something we can talk about. It also gave him something more than to just talk about, hey, I'm a musician, I'm in the studio today, here's what I'm doing. It was really, he found a purpose. So we were able to build a model around him, how he was forging forward to build an organization to help the homeless, which he had a foundation, and that gave him some sense of purpose. And he found a lot of people that cared about that same thing, and basically built a business around those organizations, because those people cared about what he was doing. Then they would get involved, and they actually supported him. He got a lot of gigs in that thing, started doing this stuff. So we actually built it around a specific area or topic that he cared about from the story point of view. And so I recommend to artists, find what's important to you. And one of the things you can look at is the 17 sustaining goals that the UN has put out. There's all kinds of things, from homelessness, clean water, air. If there's something you are passionate about, that you care about besides your music, by backing those two things together, it can be very valuable, because, like I said, once you have that data and you understand a little bit about growth hacking, you can go find that audience and put your message in front of that audience, because the key is how do I build an audience that care what I'm doing. So I won't get too deep in it, but then it goes story. The second one is plan. I've been a serial entrepreneur for years. And have had started actually my fourth business. I'm in my late nudist. No, it's not a nudist.
Oh, yeah, we're learning so much more about you.
It's my new startup. It's called Think Experience, and we're an immersive entertainment company. We can talk about that later. But the idea of lean startup is to test and validate and figure out. So I teach the whole lean startup principles to artists, and there's a thing called the lean canvas, which I recommend to everybody. And what it is it's basically a one-page business plan. Because as an artist, you still have to think as a business now. It's not so much, if you're an artist, you're in business, it's a business. I'll ask the other question, is this a business or a hobby? If it is a business, then we have to treat it like a business and use these principles. So I would recommend artists out there to learn a little bit about lean startup. You can, it's used in Silicon Valley like crazy now. It's how all businesses are done. And it's really about testing, validating, and finding the smallest thing you can do that will connect and be able to actually be valuable and actually grow your business. So when I hear artists today, a lot of them say, I'm going to go make an album, and I'm going, well, nobody's buying albums.
Right.
Nobody cares. First of all, you can't sell music anymore. There's nowhere to sell music, right? Nobody will buy music. You can't even hardly give it away. Right. So you have to really be clever about what you're doing and how you are unique to what's going on. And we'll talk about that more. But anyway, The plan, story plan. Plan is critical. Lean startup. Go to leanstack.com, leanstack.com. And there you can create your lean canvas, and it asks 9 questions. And those questions are pertinent to anybody trying to do a business. And this will help you a lot because it'll help focus you on what you're doing. And more important, it'll tell you what you're not going to do, because you can spin your wheels all day long and spend a bunch of time. Anyway, we go through the whole process of learning the planning. And then the A part, which is a big one, space, S-P-A. A stands for Army. And what do I mean by that? It's really, who are the influencers, the people, your super fans that are already existing around you. Learn to understand what they do, who they are, and learn to incorporate them into your business. There's ways that, like I hear artists all the time, oh, it's so hard, I can't do all this work myself, I need a team. Well, your team is surrounding you. And I've seen it. If you can create value and create stuff, the super fans that are around you will actually really help you and grow your business. I've had some artists that I've taken through our process, and we looked at their super fans, and we found one that was a great video editor and another one that was a killer website developer. And we figured out a way to bring them into the strategy and get them to build. And we now have start building a team around you. And also, the name of the game, and it's like any business, I always teach, it's about influencing influencers. So in your Army, who are the influencers that are surrounding it, you have access to, that if you have something of real value, I can then go to those people and I can bring them in. So Army is a big one because that's really the people around you. Then the next one is the C, which is conversion. Conversion.
No one likes talking about conversion.
Nobody likes to talk about conversion because conversion is the one that's tough. But in reality, that's the game. It's how do I convert? And now we know there's all these new, you can go out and learn conversion funnels. And I suggest that anybody that's out there as an artist, what is a conversion funnel? Learn what it is. You can Google it. And there's so much data around conversion funnels now. And really the fundamental thing of a conversion funnel is, once you meet somebody and you finally, let's say you get their email or get their connection, how do I move them through the process to become a fan of mine? And what's that? So there's ways through email systems, through text messaging, through all these different ways to learn how to convert your fan into a customer. Remember that word?
Yes.
I tell people fans are fans, customers are paying people, and you need to have customers in your business. Because if you don't, your business will fail and you can't move on. So the C, and then the E is the big one. That's the education part. Because if you're not getting educated, you're not going to be able to do any of that of what I just said above if you don't go to school every day. So I recommend artists to find people, search. You have Google now, and that search engine is the most powerful thing you have at your fingertips. You can find out about anything. You can educate yourself about anything. So I recommend, getting educated. Start following those artists that are doing it. Start learning how to use Twitter for business. Twitter's one thing, but you start searching Twitter for business, and it'll teach you how to use Twitter for business. Go type that in, and people will start teaching you how that works. How to use Facebook ads, all these things that you can start to learn to understand, like running an ad in Facebook isn't just going in there and clicking some boxes. It's really understanding how the algorithms work and how you can basically take advantage of those networks. So from an artist point of view, I teach that space thing, and I think that's one of the most important things because it walks you through the whole process. If you want to be an artist today, you got to take it like a business. So there you go, a little bit about space. One thing that's really important that I teach artists, and I see them failing all the time on this, there's a thing called the 7 levels of conversation and conversion. And this is basically, it starts like this. At the bottom of the pyramid, if you think of it as a pyramid, as where the conversion happens, is an advertisement. Just throwing out an ad converts the least amount. The next is a direct marketing piece, or something that's at least going to a targeted market. That's the next one. The next one is social media. Social media is a great place to meet people, but you got to funnel them through that funnel to actually convert them. There's a process. The next one, believe it or not, is a handwritten note. A handwritten note is a wonderful way to build fans. So if a fan does something well for you and on your social media, write them a note, take a picture of it, and send it to them in the thing, because they see the effort. People don't throw away handwritten messages. this. I see people that have gotten handwritten letters and they keep them forever. So a handwritten note is a great way to convert somebody. If some fan does it, or actually take a picture of yourself, write a video of yourself, saying thank you very much and send it to you. I guarantee you that fan will be your fan forever after that. The next one is a phone call for converting, because at least now I'm having a one-on-one conversation. The next two are the most important ones that artists have the opportunity, but they don't really take advantage of. And that is a live event, because now I'm in front of people and in person. Those are the two best places to convert. So I tell artists, here you play gigs, you're playing a gig, you're in front of a 50 to 100 to 200 to 500 people. What is your conversion strategy to bring those people on, to have that contact information and be part of that? You get to not only get out in front of the audience, have something of value to tell them in order to get their information. And secondly, you can walk around and do one-on-ones, because every time you convert, you're bringing somebody in. Remember, you want to build that 1,000 true super fans. That's it. That's all an artist, if they do that. And 1,000 people on a global basis is not that unheard of. Now,
Right.
It may take you a year or two to do it, but once you have that fan base, you'll kill it. I have a friend of mine that is an artist. She was on the last Warped Tour. She says to me that she basically, her entire living is made off of about 150 fans.
Wow.
To support her on her gigs, she started a tie-dye clothing line. And
Yeah.
all these people support her. They come to her gigs. They're her friends. They're almost like family right now. But she says it's only 150 people. So that's the key, is really building that super fan base, because we know from the data again that 60% of all your revenue will come from 1 to 3% of your audience.
Wow.
So building and understanding and getting those super fans, I can't tell anybody more. And it's like every day you go to the market, I'm sure you've seen the same checker at that market. What kind of relationship have you built with them? Have you invited them to your shows? Who do they know? Who do your super fans know? Because it's always that few degrees. I mean, it's even funny to me that even band members don't even know what the relationship of the band member is, who their influencers are. Because one of the band members might have a father that happens to run a bank. Well, that bank might be a sponsor program for one of your things that you're doing down the street, where you're actually got a concert going on and you're raising funds for homelessness or for an organization or something, and they would come in as sponsors. And you got to think outside the box. Here's another incredible tip, and I want to give this to the audience out there. Again, I'm all about the independent artists and trying to figure out ways to do things.
Yeah.
Here's the one. I have a friend. I met a girl. Her name is Shalida Burke. You should all check her out. Shalida was actually the keynote speaker at South by Southwest the last couple of years. She was in Forbes just recently. She just won a major songwriting contest. And what's interesting about her is she came out of technology. She was a senior data analyst and senior software engineer out of Microsoft, who quit and went on to be music. But she is all about the internet understanding. So when I first met her, she says, well, I said, what do you do? She says, well, I've been touring. And I said, well, how are the shows going? She says, well, I sell out every show. I said, how do you do it? She says, yeah, well, even if I go into a town for the first time, I sell it out. I said, what? How do you do that? Check this out. She says, have you ever heard of meetups.com? I said, meetup.com. Well, that's this thing where people get online, they have community, and then they meet up at a location as a group, right? So she says what she does is she books her tour. Then she joins the meetups on meetup.com that is in that location. She understands. She joins those communities. She's on all the time talking to everybody. Then she says, hey, everybody, let's have the meetup. I'm going to be in town doing my gig at this location. Let's have the meetup there. She fills the joint up with all her friends that she had before she even came into town.
Wow.
Monster hack. That's like the most killer growth hack I've heard.
That's brilliant.
And what she does is then she goes to the club owner where she's playing. She says, oh, I want a special drink for all my friends are going to come here. And I need to give them, I'm going to fill this place up. So I need to get a deal. So she builds a deal with the customer, with the club owner, and makes that happen. Then the other hack she does is she sets up with all her super fans, she sets up home shows between her gigs. So when she does her tours, she gets a super fan to set up a gig at their house and invite all their friends. And she brings merch and she sells all her merch and all her records. And she makes 5 times the amount of money doing those home shows at super fans' houses. It's in between her other gigs. So she built an entire model around that and just killed it. So those are the kinds of things artists have to do, is they have to start thinking about how to hack the system and build growth. But the number one things is super fans pay the bills, and it only takes 150 to make a living. And then from there you scale. So again, the great thing about lean startup is it teaches you this thing. You take the smallest thing you can that you can get the biggest amount of impact, and you put that out there, and you get the ball to roll, and you test and validate. So like with me, with my business, I'll go with my thing. I'll put drawings together of what I want to go build. I'll go to Starbucks. I'll see somebody sitting there and say, hey, can I buy you a cup of coffee? And I have a handful of questions. I put it in front of them and I say, what do you think? Right? And they give me information. And once I know I have strong signals that I'm going down the right path, then I pour gas on it. I go for it, but I don't go for it because there's so often artists, business people, there's a thing called in the business world called the founder's dilemma. And that is, I have a great idea. I know everybody's going to want it. So I'm going to go make this idea right now, and I'm going to go out and sell it. He makes it, puts all the time and effort in, and nobody cares.
Yeah.
A couple people care, right? So it's the same thing. I mean, all these principles work to artists because you're selling your craft, who you are. How do I test and validate what I'm doing? My music, what am I doing? Am I getting honesty? Because here's the problem. Your friends and family aren't going to be honest with you. I hate to tell you, they're not going to say, oh, that song sucks. As an artist, I always wish, going in the studio, I wish I could hear the song after we've made it for the first time. Like, what does it sound like if I don't have any idea what it is? So that's always the tough one. So, you got to test, validate, see if you're going down the right area. The other thing I tell artists that is really important, stop chasing the market. I can't tell you how many artists that are trying to go, oh, this is the new thing. It's, house music. So I'm going to go write something that's this, or I'm going to try to be what this is over here. You have to be an artist. You have to be honest with what you are. You've got to build your market, make it be honest, because I see all these artists that are just great and they go try to be the latest cool groove and try to be this thing, and it always seems to fail because doesn't come from a place of being honest. And what I mean by that, it's something that's your thing, right? You're trying to sound like something else as opposed to wearing your own clothes.
Right. I have another question for you. Sure. And that is, like, you have insanely good advice. I mean, as an artist, I'm sitting here and I'm just taking it all in. And I'm like, wow, I've been doing so many things wrong.
Yeah, there's a whole process about going about all this. There's a whole methodology that you need to put in place. But again, it's building a business, and that's what you are. You're a business. You're an entrepreneur, right? Right.
So I know a lot of people are going to want to know, like, what was the coolest show you ever did with Pink Floyd?
Well, that has to go down with there was probably 3 or 4 that were really crazy. The Palace of Versailles, we played.
Wow.
We did this ancient Rome kind of amphitheaters in Italy. But without a doubt, the all-time greatest gig that I've ever played in my life, and there's been nothing like it, is we did Venice. We played Venice, Italy, where they floated these 2 barges down from Oslo. It took 2 weeks for them to come down. The entire Pink Floyd show was set up on the water, 150 yards off of St. Mark's Square. Roughly 400, it was a free concert, roughly 400,000 people showed up in Venice, shut the entire thing down. I mean, it was crazy. People were living on gondolas for 5 days while we were setting up this thing, and it was like the most amazing thing. You can go online and Google it, Pink Floyd Venice, and you can look at it. The aftermath was crazy. The whole city was destroyed, unfortunately. The trash, the garbage. I mean,
oh no!
But yeah, it was one of the incredible gigs of all time, and it was broadcast to about 120 countries around the world at the same time. There's nothing like that show that we did. It was one of the probably greatest rock shows in history, without a doubt.
So I am, I'm a big Pink Floyd fan, but I know people who are much larger Pink Floyd fans than me. But I am a huge fan of Toto. Actually,
Yeah.
like that's one of my favorite bands. And I know it sounds like cliche, but my favorite song is literally Africa. But and
Yeah, it's a great one.
Yeah, my mentor and we every time we hear that song, we just stop and just sing it out in the middle of anywhere. So what was your cool experience with that band?
Well, I always tell this. Jeff Porcaro, first of all, David Page and Jeff were I went to school. I went to a different school, but I played with them, the kids. But Jeff was always probably my biggest hero mentor, even though I was older than him. We started in kids. I was 17 years old, and they were like 14 and 13 when we were playing in the bands. But Jeff was an extraordinary talent, and boy, I miss him like crazy. We used to load up his drums. I had this old 57 Porsche back in high school, and we'd load up his drums. I'd take all the seats out and put his drums in there, and we'd go play casuals and gigs and stuff as we were kids. But probably with Toto, Jeff was one of the greatest drummers of all time. I happen to be a complete fanatic about the groove. Everything I do is about time. I've lived with metronomes for years. I owned one of the first 5 Lynn drum machines of all time. Been a big fanatic of the groove. And Jeff was, one of the masters of all time. I mean, he played on, God,
He was.
I forget how many records, thousands of records. I mean, the guy was incredible, and the hits that he played on with all the stuff. But Jeff's time was so good, and his feel was so good. People ask me, what was the best thing about playing with Toto? And I'd always say this: I got to play the cowbell on 5 songs with Jeff Porcaro. His groove so deep. I remember I used to stand. My riser was right next to him, and I'd look at him, and I would wait for those nights because I'd pick up that cowbell, and I would be able to sit there and drill him, look in his eyes, pick up that drumstick, and sink that drumstick into that beat of that thing with him on all those tunes. And it was so amazing because where he would play the backbeat on different ones, sometimes he'd put it a little behind, a little bit ahead. And so it was really going to school. And that was like, honest to God, it was the greatest thing. Better than sex. That was sex. It was sex. It was like the greatest thing. So playing with Jeff and
spoken like a true rock star.
And was one of the great things. I have a ton of great stories. Steve Lukather is one of the funniest guys on the planet, and there's so many stories with him. But yeah, I love that band so much. I mean, it's probably some of the best musicians. I mean, great musicians. Jeff Lukather, Page, Mike, rest in peace, and it was just really a great band. And the whole family. Joe Porcaro, the father, is a great drummer still today, teaching. And I have to say that they're the Porcaros, the family, Jeff. I'm actually really a musician because of Jeff, even though my father taught me, but I got into it. But Jeff was really what really inspired me to become a musician. And I can't tell you how excited I was when I got called to play with Toto years later, because actually when we played as a kid in the kid band, I was the worst guy in the band. I was the second trumpet player. So I played trumpet all the way through into college, and I switched to saxophone and later some guitar as the time went on. But yeah, Jeff Porcaro, Toto, unbelievable.
Last question of the day. You have been so awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. How did you actually establish yourself? So now, like, knowing everything that you know now, obviously you have years of experience in the gig economy and really figuring it out.
Still gigging like crazy.
Still gigging like I know you are literally like the master gigger. That's why we are interviewing you. But like really, what I want to know is how did you, aside from doing 100,000 gigs, what actually established you? Like, how did you actually establish yourself?
It's really simple. It's 2 things: passion and being kind. Seriously. I mean, it's really about relationships. The whole business is about relationships. and building those relationships. And I come from a point, man, what can I always do for other people? Because it seems to work as a principle. It always comes back to you. So I can tell artists, just give, always play as many gigs as you can. Makes my eyes water. Play as many gigs, get in front of as many people, and meet as many people as you can, and try to be as helpful as you possibly can. And you will be amazed on how much comes back at you. That's the trick. And it's knowing who to call. So there you go. That's my thing. Made me cry because it's so true. There's nothing more important. And taking that inward journey, figuring out who you are and what you do, that's the game.